Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell. I'm a doula in Washoe County, Nevada, a Medicaid provider, a lactation educator, childbirth educator, and mom of 18. You can find me and connect on doulainreno.com. Remember, give a shout out to those who are brave enough to share their stories with us on how they have become parents. Let's dive in. Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell. I'm here with Monica Esquerra. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Happy day after Thanksgiving.
Oh, yes, it's Black Friday today. We're Black
Right?
Friday podcasting.
Yes. So thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it. So I know you were very, very busy.
Oh,
So
no, I think this is great. And this is a local episode, which I absolutely love because I feel like I get to shout out someone who lives right down the street from me.
yeah,
I want you to
definitely.
jump in and start sharing your parenting journey.
So as I mentioned to you, we ended up fostering after 16 years of trying. And it's always been an option. It was always in the back of my mind that, whether it was through myself or through somebody else that I would be a parent. And I was okay with that. I think after so many years, I kind of accepted it. And I'm like, you know what? In the long run, if I'm not, I'm okay with it. If I do, great. Um, and even though after I accepted it, there was always still that piece missing
Mm.
that you can never like quite put your finger on it. And then that started triggering me of like, okay, let's try this road of adoption and see, if this is what's the missing piece. Because we did start, I don't know, like with here in the state of Nevada, you obviously have to go through like classes to become, a certified foster parent. And we did the classes once prior before. And after going through the whole process, I was like mortified. I was like, oh my God, we've always had dogs. Like dogs have been our babies, quote unquote. And I'm like, I get so attached to just dogs that I'm like, I can't fathom the idea of bringing home a child and not knowing, are they going to stay with us? Are they not going to stay with us? I said, I don't know if emotionally my heart can take that right now. And that put a freeze on everything. And I was just like, no, I'm not ready for it because sad to say, that was the only like relatable thing that I could, relate to. And I'm like, if I love these little dogs so much, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to love on this child and then be like, possibly, here you go. The child doesn't stay with us. So that really scared me. So then we put everything on hold and I just kind of like put it on the back burner. And I was like, well, you know, I don't know if this isn't really the road that I want to go through. So we went about normal life again. We just, worked and, that was just our main focus is like, we were content. It was just us two. And, I had my nieces and they were a huge part of my, desire to be a mom because like I love them like they were my own. And even to this day, like, there's such a huge age gap, between our little one now versus, their age, they're 17 and 20.
Mhm.
But I feel like they were a huge influence on me wanting to become a mom, just because that bond I had, with them. But yeah, so we revisited the whole foster to adopt like 4 years later. And I said, okay, I'm not getting any younger. Like either we do this or we do this, you know, both feet jumping in. So we did. And the classes kind of scare you a little bit because they're brutally honest. They're like, there's the wonderful outcome, but at the same time, the journey may be bumpy. And, it is. It's very bumpy. But in the end, is it worth it? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's not for the faint. It's a long journey. It's a lot emotionally, physically draining, emotionally draining, and it puts your heart really at I think your heart and your faith to the ultimate test.
Go back to the 16 years. So you guys worked regular jobs, you were married, and for 16 years you tried. Did you go through any infertility? Did
We
you just,
did. So we
okay.
went through the whole routine of like, mine was kind of like basically unexplained infertility because I got my cycles normal every month on my own. I just never became pregnant. Not even an oops, not even a nothing, And he was like, I would thought you would have been my easy fix, like giving you like Clomid to help you, ovulate even more. And, you know, boom, you would, get pregnant on your own. And we did a lot of in-office treatments of like where they would, go in and with the ultrasound and see like, okay, should we start your pills on this cycle this day? And, we did, I think 6 months of that of nonstop. And it was just, I just felt it was more of a chore than just, you know, I don't know. It was hard because it was just, it seemed more of a like a routine versus like, let's get pregnant. And it was more like of a chore. And it just
Yeah.
became, it just, I don't know, it was just very unnatural, very, I don't even know the word for it. Like, hmm.
It is
It was
unnatural. I mean, I did the same thing. I did the Clomid and Provera, so they're forcing your cycle, and
right,
then like 7 day surgeries, which is like flushing your fallopian tubes, taking biopsies, just
right.
all the different things. And I mean, physically, it's hard. That medication
Yes,
makes you feel like you're a psycho, and
yes.
emotionally,
It,
it's hard because you're like something's broken, fix it, and they're like,
yeah,
I don't know, doesn't look like
yeah,
anything.
that
I
was my,
get it. Yeah.
yeah. And it was just like, oh, I don't know, you're just, it's unexplained. And like they didn't really, I felt like I kind of like wasn't heard. And it was just because their excuse was like, well, you get your period every month. Like you should be good. I'm like, okay, well, something's not causing this. And then my sister also went through a whole bout of infertility and she ended up going through the whole process of doing IVF. And
Oh, okay.
so for me, it was like, financially it wasn't in our plans
Hmm.
because it's astronomically,
Yeah.
And then we thought, okay, also the price of private adoption is astronomical. And so we were just like, okay, well, maybe we aren't meant to be parents. Who knows? I don't know. And so just I think so many years of doing those cycles, like I'd say every 8 months, because it's like you get your hopes up and then you
Yeah.
try like 4 or 5 cycles and then you're like, oh, we'll just wait, And my thing was like, let's put it in God's hands, whatever He wants to do, and it just that became our normal routine. Like, just we'll see what happens. But then after so many years, I was just like, I give up,
Yeah.
like at this point, like I'm done. Like, I didn't have it in me. I didn't have it because, like you said, even though your husband is like sympathetic with you and they're like, oh, don't worry, like, but it's a huge burden on, like, I felt on my heart.
Yeah.
And so having to do just normal life, normal routines, normal, like, oh, you get invited to so many baby showers. And it's like, like, it's like you don't want to be selfish and be like, not be happy for that person. But at the same time, it was hurtful, and it was just like, why can't that be me? So,
I
it's hard.
I felt broken, like there was something
Exactly.
wrong with me, like I was less of a woman, or
Uh-huh.
it really messes with your mind a lot when you're going through infertility. I did 10 months and I was like, I am done and I'm never doing this again. And if I
Yeah.
can't have kids, that's fine, because I was totally fine going the foster care route, which I did. But then I was also like by fluke. Maybe it's
Yes.
just not in their book. I'm like, maybe this isn't in your book. Because literally, I had to do like my basal body temperature every morning, sex
Yes.
every other day on the calendar. It starts to become a chore, like, okay, let's get this done. Like,
Like,
there's nothing sexy and fun about infertility sex
no,
at all.
no.
So it has a negative effect, I think, like you said, on your heart, with us as women, but it can make things more challenging in your marriage too. And that's so
Yeah, because
hard.
one person it's not that they're accepting of it, they just can't relate. Like,
Yeah.
and it's not that he wasn't supportive. No, it was just like I would try to explain my feelings and he's like, yeah, but he's like, it's okay. I'm like, no, it's not okay. Like you don't like they didn't have that same, I guess, not desire because that's not the word, but that same like, God, it's like I can't even put that, like it was okay. Like he was like, I'm happy whether we have kids or not. He's like, I'm okay with it. I'm like, yes, I understand that. And I as well, but there's still that 1% in my heart that's like, desire to be a mom, and so it did become like not tension, but it was just, I felt kind of like unheard, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because
I
he was like very passive about it. Just it's okay, it's fine,
like,
like
I'm
whatever.
fine. We'll have a great marriage. We'll be the best aunt and uncle. Those are
Yeah,
supportive things, but I totally get what you mean. Like there's this disconnect. I mean, even women who are just like, "Ah, I just got pregnant so easily. You're like, you will never
exactly.
get my struggle. You just
Exactly.
don't understand how hard it is. I do understand going through like the foster care classes. It's 27 hours for
Hmm.
traditional foster care. And
Right.
I'm glad I'm as someone who was part of foster care for 15 years, and I was a recruiter and trainer for the last three. I
Oh,
think
wow.
it's great to scare people because it is so hard. Foster care is
Very hard.
so hard. The timeline, the things that drag out, the stuff that comes up. And so for you to say, it scared me and I wasn't ready, in my mind, I'm like, great, good. Because
Yeah.
even when you think you're ready, it feels like a steamroller.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
like constantly getting hit by 2x4s. Did Washoe County, when you did this, did they have the foster to adopt program?
Yes.
Or okay, because I
Yeah.
I did the foster to adopt program in Alaska, and then it was a different situation when I did foster care in Nevada. So take me through that process the second time. And your husband was totally on board. He's like, okay, let's do it again,
Yeah.
which
I
is
mean, he's like,
so good.
what are you going to do? Like, and that's the thing with him. He's never been one to say no to me. Like,
Right.
not, I mean, I could bring home a baby cow and he'd be like, okay. Like, and so that's wonderful in that aspect. But at the same time, like, sometimes I need, like, no, we can't do that. Like, I need a rhyme of reason. And he's never my rhyme of reason because he's like, do whatever you want, like, whatever makes you happy. And I'm like, oh, that's not the answer I was looking for. But no, it is. So
No.
we went through the process, and again, those same, emotions and feelings went through my mind of like, oh my God, I'm like, am I ready for this? And at that time I was in the medical field. I was a medical assistant for 14 plus years. In like the last 11, I was like always like a supervisor. So I was gone. I was gone from like 7 in the morning till like 7:30 at night, 6 o'clock at night. And I'm like, okay, if I want to become a parent, is this feasible? As a woman, because you feel like you're the sole provider, you're the caretaker and, household, everything. So I'm like, thinking like, is this really, what we want to do? Long story short, we went through the whole process and I thought, okay, they had that foster to adopt program. And I was like, okay, well, maybe we can do this where we sign up to do foster parents, but actually only wait for an actual child that's adoptable because they
Okay.
have to go through the whole process of like, you know, that they're ready to be adopted. I said, okay, that I could do because I know that, the point that we get that phone call that they're ready to be adopted.
Right.
And we don't have to go through the yes or no, do they stay, do they not stay? Because it's a dance,
Yep.
And then for like 2 years, we didn't get a call because that's how long it takes. It takes a long time to get a child. And especially we were selfish and we wanted an infant, you know? And they're like, yeah, like that's not the easiest way. But then we have friends that we, met through this journey and they're like, oh yeah, both of our babies, no parent history, no nothing. Nobody claimed them. We had them since birth. Like boom, like
Yeah.
they were that unicorn and we got it twice. And then we had another family friends that, same thing. They had little ones, no visitations, no nothing. And I'm like, and here's us that, we got the call finally for a little girl. And when we got the call, we still had to do an interview process to make sure that we were a good fit for her and for her needs. And, that they wanted to make sure that, vice versa, that we were a good fit for her and she was a good fit for us.
Mhm.
So we interviewed for her. And I was like, oh my God, is this really happening? Is this really happening? Because it's like, how long did we wait for this, And I was like beyond excited. And so that was, I remember April of 2020, 21, sorry, April 21, we got that call. And so we interviewed for her. And by like May, we got a response. Yes, she will be a fit for you guys. And then we can start the whole process of transition. So she was going from her initial foster mom home that she was there since 3 days old up until 16 months old when, we got the call for her. And basically our next step was we were going to do a court hearing for like our adoption agreement, what our terms were, what the parents' terms were going to be because their rights were going to be revoked. So we go to the court, and of course, this was all during COVID, so it was via Zoom. And we got a new judge. She was new to her case, and she basically started from ground zero. She said, "Oh, the parents deserve a second chance because it's
Oh,
COVID. They really haven't had visitations." And I was like, "What? Like, could this be happening?"
yeah.
So we went from one visitation a week, which she was originally doing, to three visitations a week. And I was like, just totally like baffled because I'm like, okay, and so rather than moving forward, we're moving backwards. So we basically sounded from ground zero again. So our little one, to this day, if you know her, she has no stranger danger whatsoever. Like she will talk to anybody. She will like, she's very lovable, very sociable. But for some reason with her parents, she was very like, I had to stay in the room with her. I had to stay for visitations because she just would not, like, she would not open up to them. And so here we went from one visitation a week to three. And then we went back in like 6 months later, and they're like, oh, we should have in-home visitation. So where she would go to their home. So I'm like, what are we doing here? Like we're giving them more opportunity, more visitations, and now in their home. I was like, okay, let's just go with it. Let's do it. And again, same thing with my husband. Like it was so stressful for me and so like gut wrenching. And because he wasn't the one doing the visitations, he wasn't doing the one like picking her up, taking her there, seeing how she was in person. He's he's like, let's just do it. I'm like, okay, it's easy for you to say because you're not the one going through the whole, song and dance. I said, I'm the one that has to sit there and watch her. I'm the one that has to get off work early to go take her. And then sometimes they wouldn't even show up.
Oh, and
So
that's actually good because like you want them to not show up. Just don't show up.
yeah, but the thing
Awesome.
you're still working and you're, getting off work early to make these visitation happens, and then they're like, "Oh, they didn't show up." And
Yep.
I'm like, and there's no consequences, no nothing, no. So that was getting a lot of, becoming very frustrated because here I am, like, I'm putting my work hours, reducing my work hours to like make this happen and, so long story short, we went through like 16 more months of that, of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it was just, I felt like, oh my God, we were at this point where we were going to get this child. And now I'm second questioning, like, will she have a chance to go back to her parents? But given the nature of our story, like, it was very slim to zero, but you never know. With the
No.
way our case went, I wasn't I wasn't questioning anything because I'm like, you never know. You absolutely never know. And I remember we got a court date of May 11th to go through with like, you know, um, what's it called? Termination.
Yep.
And the parents knew that if they lost in court, that they would not have like an open adoption. That was like the end, their connection with her. And so they knew that if they gave up their rights, they would still have the option of, having some sort of communication with her in the end. So after all of that we went through, of the constant back and forth and, giving them opportunity after opportunity to get this child back, and they still, they had a lot of things like basically handed to them, and they still couldn't do that. And I'm like, and so you guys are still considering, letting her go back to them. But I'm like, okay, I'm like, whatever God wants, we're doing. But me as a mom, I said, I am not giving up on her. I said, we have come this far. There's no way in hell I'm giving up on her at all. And we didn't. We stuck through it, and they knew that if they went to court that they weren't going to get her back. And so May 11th was our court date, and like April 22nd, they said, fine, we'll sign over rights to you guys. And I was like desperate. I was like, pleading, like, we'll do whatever. And there's so much details that I can't expose, but at the same time, like when they say that like that mama bear comes out, you best believe that happened. I fought tooth and nail for that child because there is no way we were giving up on her. And I approached their attorney, our attorney, the district attorney. I got a CASA involved. I mean, I was not stopping. And I did. I mean, I did whatever it took to save that little girl. And now we can officially say she's ours, you know?
How old was she when the adoption was final?
It's so we adopted her on National Adoption Day, November 4th of 2022. She's was just short under 3 years old. She turns 3 November 9th, and we adopted her November 4th.
Hmm.
So,
It's a
but
long battle. I don't think people
oh, it
realize,
is.
and even when they're like adoptable, termination has to happen for kids to be considered free, which is free for adoption.
Yep.
And a lot of the times they know that termination is likely, but it hasn't happened yet.
It
And
has to go through the whole process. Yeah.
we've had two kids removed. I had two kids removed from my home at that point, which is absolutely devastating.
Oh, it is.
I had, I adopted six total. So
Gosh,
it works out, but holy cow, it's a process.
it
After
is.
that, did you stay in the program? Were you
No, our case was very rare. It actually went to the Supreme Court, and yeah, no. After, because we had like other, like, so we did in after that 2 years of not getting a call for an adopted child, they said, our caseworker's like, well, why don't you do like emergency placements? And I was like, okay, we did. But again, like having these like infants that we would pick them up from the hospital, and the first one, we ended up having him for almost 9 months, and that broke me. Like I was like, I'm never doing this again.
Yeah.
Because they're like, they tell us love them as your child, and you do.
Yep.
You like they're part of your family, they're part of like they're your everyday routine. And it's like for them to go back, it's like, how? It broke
It's
me, it
hard.
broke my mom. My mom got very attached to the baby as well. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I'm like, I cannot do this because you still had to like go to work. You still had to like do your day to day, but yet you were mourning a child that was like never yours, And that was like, it was horrible,
It's horrible.
horrible. But
So
you're expected to continue with life like if nothing ever happened. And that doesn't happen. So it's hard. And I was very scared when we got the call for her because I'm like, what if we don't get her? And after everything we went through, that like triggered my heart to be like, no, we're not giving up on her. And we didn't, we did not. And she just turned 5, and I couldn't imagine life without her. we're
But that
older parents.
and that
And
doesn't mean that you want to go back and try it again.
yeah, I just emotionally, I can't.
Right.
Emotionally, it's overwhelming. It's too much. And it's not, when I hear people say, like, oh, well, we have kids, but we have all boys and we want to try for a girl, but I don't want to go through the pregnancy. And so we're going to do foster adopt. I'm like, these aren't puppies.
Yeah.
Mhm. People see it as like, oh, well, we're able to have kids, but we want a girl. And I'm just like, you need to emotionally prepare yourself for this because this is not a puppy that you get sent home with.
Yeah.
Like, this is a child that you love and you care for. And, I just, I get where they're coming from, but at the same time, coming from the other end of someone that could not have kids, it's not, here you go, here's your little girl. No, there's so much more behind the scenes that people don't know. That it's like it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. It's heart-wrenching. Like I ended up, you know, switching my jobs because like I told you, I was gone for, 14, 13 hours a day. And when we started the whole process, like I basically didn't work for almost 2 years because I couldn't with the increased visitations and, attorney meetings, case hearings, social work meetings, like, and then plus we had in the whole mix of it, we had the little, baby boy at the same time. And for the first 6 months of his life, he did nothing but cry. He was colicky. He was born addicted and he did nothing but cry the first 6 months of his life. And that in itself was rough having to deal with, his visitations as well, plus our little one's visitations. I thought I was losing my mind, but I still had to get up, get dressed, get, face forward. And on the inside, I felt like I was dying. And I'm like, why am I doing this? You know,
So hard. I think it's
It-
worth it, but it's
it's
so
so
hard.
worth it. But in the whole process of it, it's like excruciating.
Mhm.
And no one understands that until you actually go through it.
That's true. That's completely true.
It's
Tell
very
me
true,
about how your job transferred because I want to, I'm all about shameless self-promotion and you are local
right?
to my area. So I know how trying it was to just have a normal job with two little kids or one little one and balancing all the it's almost impossible to keep your job and be able to
Yes.
do everything that you're doing. Tell me what made you switch and tell me all about your business.
So I went from the medical field, my adult life. That's all I knew. And then I was like, I need a job that has like more flexibility that, and I had like several people say like, go to the school district, you'll have breaks off, summers off. And so I did. I looked into it, not totally what I wanted to do, but it fit my needs. So when I went back, I went part-time. And I was like a clinical aide because I'm like, what can I do that's still in the medical field that, because that was my jam. That's all I knew, So I was just like, all right. And so I went back as a clinical aide sub. So like whenever they needed me, like a school nurse was out or whatever, I would fill in for there. And then also with our baby being very like high needs, um, I was like, okay, when can my mom help me? Because my husband would work like from 6 to 6. So he was gone 12, 13 hours a day also. So he wasn't really like considered in the picture. I'm like, what can my mom help me with? So um I took like a part-time position too for Team Up, which is like an after-school program for kids that are, that need, that extra one-on-one guidance and, curriculum help. So, and that was like from 3 to 6:30. And so I did that for a while. And then I got a position at Jesse Beck Elementary as a front office aide. So I did that. And then once life started to kind of like smooth out, like where we knew like, okay, we were decreasing our, appointments, we were decreasing our visitations, we were, we were kind of like coasting at this point. So I'm like, maybe I can take on a full-time position. And then I was like, okay, maybe. So I applied for Child Find, which is in Washoe County. We assessed kiddos ages 3 to 5 that, could possibly need an IEP. And we have them assessed and whatnot. So I was there for 2 years and I loved that job, because I was still able to like, help families and, you know, do what I needed to do. And my boss was wonderful with like working with us, like, because when I started there, we still hadn't finalized our adoption. And, she got sick or, something was going on with my family. Like, she was very accommodating, very, just the support of my whole work team was phenomenal. So, I was super, super thankful for that. But also because it took me so long to have her. I said by the time she starts kindergarten, I want to be able to work for myself and have my own schedule and not worrying about having to call in if she gets sick or if I'm sick or whatever the case is. I'm like, I just didn't want that anymore. I'm like, I waited so long to become a mom that I wanted to be able to have my own schedule, you know? And I gave myself that deadline. By the time she starts kindergarten, I want to be able to work for myself. So amongst all this, like I started looking into like what can I do that, that I can, create my own schedule. And so like I looked into notary and there was, one, I'm bilingual and there's hardly any bilingual notaries.
Right.
So thankfully, like I jumped in feet first with that and I did great. At first it was a little slow because it's like you're the only one self-promoting yourself. And within time, it's like, people word of mouth. Word of mouth has been key for me and it's been phenomenal. And then I'm like, what else can I add? I'm like, oh, a loan signing agent is also a notary, And so I added that to my services for loan signing agent, and obviously it pays more and it's great. But then also there was a huge like hold on, home purchasing and, refinancing because of our rates. So that wasn't the greatest, but I still have it, in my back pocket and I still use it. But then I like it's funny how God works because I also added remote online notary.
Yeah.
So I can do notaries from the comfort of my own home as well as, our client, and I can do it nationwide, obviously, if as long as I'm still in the state of Nevada. And I had a broker reach out to me from Tennessee who does financial planning, life insurance. And she's like, hey, like all of our, jobs are done remotely. And
Mhm.
so like a lot of our clients with like transferring their monies, we need to have like a notary for them. And she goes, so I'm like constantly looking up notaries for, in their area, like where, hey, like you can try calling this person to be, to notarize your paperwork. She goes, I wanted to reach out to you and see like if we could kind of connect and you become our preferred notary, and that way we can just send our clients to you. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. So her and I talked, we connected, and never did she like, push me in that route of like financial planning. She was strictly like, you're a notary, I can use you, you're bilingual. Do you want to make it work? And I said, great.
Yes.
So we linked that way. And then like over time, she was telling me like how, like I could do financial planning and do life insurance and whatnot. And so again, I was able to add that to my service. So now I do notary and I'm also doing financial planning. So like I said, God works in mysterious ways. He connected us together and now I was able to, a little sooner than later. Our little one doesn't start kindergarten until next fall, because she's a November baby. So, she has 3 years of pre-K versus 2. And so I was able to, stop working at the school district and do this full time in the comfort of my home. And so here I am.
Yay! What a great
So
story.
after
And
all of
you're here.
that,
It's good to know. I mean, it's great that you can do this nationwide, so it doesn't limit people, but also to support
Exactly.
you locally. I think that that is so fantastic. What a
Yes.
crazy wild ride you've had.
Right? Here I am. But, like you said, it's all well worth it. So
It is.
worth it. I mean, it's never easy, never easy, but is it doable? Yes, it is. You
Well,
know, I-
thank you so much.
yeah, no, like I'm not a spring chicken, but I am very determined, very determined. And I look now at my parents being immigrants, and I'm like, how did you guys do what you did with no supporting family, not knowing the language, getting paid like 12, $13 an hour? How did you do it? How did you do it? And so to me, like they have been such an inspiration, such a blessing to me. Now, even though I'm older, but being a parent, I'm like, how the hell do they do it?
Right.
And I'm just baffled. And they have been such a huge support for us of like, when she was sick, my mom's like, don't call out, just bring her here. And now it's like, you know, I'd be lost without them because they're a humongous like support in our system. And she endlessly loves them. Like she loves her Yoya and her Papa Shell, and like we're so thankful for them. So
Well,
yes.
I'm thankful for you. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for coming on and sharing your
No,
story.
I thank you for having me. Thank you.